All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So, I am Mike Rain, editor in chief of Canadian Musician magazine, of course. Today's conversation is all about songwriting, both the craft of songwriting as well as the business and career of a songwriter. So, I'm really thrilled to have two fantastic songwriters with us. First up, Tebey, an Ontario born, Nashville based country music star who has penned songs for hit artists in both the country and pop worlds. Get this, just in the last 3 years, Tebey has had three #1 songs as a writer. That includes the US Billboard #1 with Justin Moore's Somebody Else Will, a Canadian #1 with Gord Bamford's Dive Bar, and his first #1 as an artist and writer with his own gold single, Who's Gonna Love You, for which he also received a SOCAN award. Tebey also co-wrote two additional top 5 radio hits during this time, those being Denim on Denim, which was certified platinum, and the song Good Jeans. Notable pop artists who have recorded Tebey songs include One Direction, Fifth Harmony, Pixie Lott, Cher, Flo Rida. In country music, he also has writing credits with Justin Moore, Big and Rich, Jimmy Rankin, Emerson Drive, Joel Nichols, and Blake Shelton, and many others. Could keep going on, but I'm already running out of breath here. Also joining us, I'm thrilled to have Andre Kaden Black. Andre has more than 20 years experience in the music industry as a songwriter, musician, producer, and also working in artist development. He has written for indie and major label artists across Canada, Asia, and the United States, including for Sony ATV, Warner, EMI, Atlantic Records, Curve Music, Big Deep Breath, 21 Entertainment, Arista, BMG. Andre has also toured extensively across North America and Asia with artists like Alicia Keys, One Republic, and Jason Mraz. Andre has also worked alongside countless award-winning talents, including multi-platinum artist Fifi Dobson and Francesco Yates, Walk Off the Earth, Vivian Hicks, with Grammy Award-winning talent agency Chris Smith Management, and with American Idol. So, man, guys, you guys have quite the resumes, but thank you for doing this. How you both doing?
Good. I'm good.
Doing great.
Perfect, guys. So we only have about an hour here. I want to make sure that we leave time for audience questions at the end, because when it comes to songwriting, I know there's always a ton of them. But just kind of as an intro and lay the foundation, how about we begin with just kind of your respective short histories? I kind of gave your point form resumes there, but what's your own, and let's start with you, Tebey, just for the sake of clarity, but in terms of your respective histories as artists and songwriters, do you mind just kind of giving me the brief Cole's Notes version that brought you up to where you are?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of delivered it in my my intro there, but yeah, it's been a long and crazy ride for me. I moved to Nashville when I was 16 years old with my dad, and was doing homeschool just so I could be, I had a record deal at the time. It's, as I said, it's been a long road, but yeah, I kind of transitioned from writing songs for other people to being maybe a little bit more of an artist, maybe about 10 years ago. But that doesn't change my songwriting. I still write songs for plenty of different artists that you've mentioned. But yeah, I kind of just wear two different hats. I've got my artist career that people are probably familiar with, and then I have my songwriting hat that I put on that has gotten me a couple #1s over the years.
Yes. How about you, Andre? What was your, I guess, road to where you are?
Yeah, again, you covered a lot in your intro, but again, I was lucky enough to sign a management deal, a major management deal early on in my career, and from the development there, I just kind of learned to songwrite with other major label songwriters, and I traveled. I was same as Tebey. I kind of wear it as a second hat to production. I was also a session player for a pretty long time as well, in my 20s, which kind of got me to where I am now. Spent a lot of time in Nashville and LA writing, but right now, just my passion is developing young artists to make them better at what they do.
Since you both kind of mentioned it there, or brought up there, I'm going to kind of go ahead with a question I had planned for later on. But as you both mentioned, you kind of have multi-dimensional careers beyond songwriting, either writing with other artists for yourselves. Andre, you do a lot of work in artist development and production and that kind of stuff. But in this day and age, I guess to make a career in songwriting, I guess the question is, do you have to be multi-dimensional in today's day and age to have a sustainable career? And how likely is it to make a career simply as a songwriter?
It's a loaded question. For me, I think it's pretty obvious that it's a lot more difficult to be a successful songwriter and actually make a good living. You know, with the business changing as far as the majority of people are getting their music from streaming platforms, and then obviously the royalties for songwriters on said DSPs are not fantastic. So yeah, it's a little bit tough, I think, for most people, because, but it, you know, again, it's no different than any other business in the world. You know, if you're in the 1%, then you're having success, right? And and I think it's no different, but I do think it's a lot harder for someone to make a 6-figure income a year being a professional songwriter than it was 10 years ago. I don't know if Andre agrees or not.
Yeah, Tebey's he hit the nail on the head. I think, is it absolutely crucial for success? No, I don't think it's crucial. But I think it's important to have multiple talents and streams of income with any business that you're dealing with. Putting all your eggs in one basket it'll limit you in regards to opportunity and relationships, which I think are two of the main sources of success in our industry. As long as there's an authentic interest in the other areas of the music industry that you're exploring, I don't see a disadvantage of learning new skills in the industry that you'd like to make a living in.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you've both spent, and Tebey, you're, I believe, still based in Nashville currently, eh?
Yeah.
And Andre, I know you spent a number of years there earlier in your career. I find Nashville such an interesting place, both when it comes to like the craft of songwriting and what goes on there, but also as a business in and of itself. It's such a unique city. So I'm wondering, kind of especially early on in your respective time in Nashville, can you each kind of discuss what challenged you most about the songwriting business there? I'm thinking both in terms of songwriting as a craft, but also as a business. Kind of like what was most eye-opening for you when you arrived in Nashville?
You know, I think one of the smartest things I ever did was when I moved to Nashville at a very young age. I realized very early on that this is a business. You know, and it's not just about writing great songs. It's about knowing how to capitalize, you know, financially on your success as a songwriter, and even how to get to that place where you're financially successful. But yeah, Nashville's changed a lot over the years. I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, I've been there since early 2000s. I feel like I'm aging myself a little bit, but it's been a while since I've been here, and it's definitely changed. I think it's if I'm honest with you, it's a little bit less about the song and more about, it's more like LA, where it's who'd you write the song with, who has publishing on this particular song, and stuff like that. You know, I feel like we're going to jump into that eventually, but I do feel that, you know, the business is kind of going that way, and so is Nashville. So it's, you know, it's changed a lot since I first came down here.
Yeah, absolutely. Andre, what did you notice in your time there?
Okay, so you know, I was writing for a lot of years in North America, or in Canada. And then I remember my first trip to Nashville. For me, one of the biggest challenges was how fast people would write there, like how fast the ideas would come to people, and how good those ideas were, and how consistent they were. So for me, right away, I was like, okay, I gotta like be faster with my ideas. So for me, the challenge was that, which made me better, which really made me a faster writer as well. And you also asked what was the most eye-opening experience I had when I first went to Nashville. For me, I was blown away by the sheer musical talent, like vocally, instrumentally, guitar, the ability to track with confidence just after writing an idea, compared to a lot of the other artists that I've worked with across, you know, North America or wherever. I just feel like Nashville, it's like songwriting and that craft is kind of like Canada's hockey. You know, it's like they're born with a freaking guitar in their hand, or they're born with the ability to write. So so that was really eye-opening for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Before I jump into the next question, I always forget to say this during these webinars, but for just all the folks watching and listening, you'll see the little chat option at the end. Like I mentioned, we're going to be taking audience questions for Andre and Tebey. So if you have a question, put it in the chat there. My friend and colleague, Andrew, is watching the chat. He's going to be passing those on to me at the end. But yeah, back to you guys. In terms of kind of digging into the actual craft of songwriting, you know, there's obviously all kinds of ways that songwriters begin a song. You know, sometimes it's an idea about a title, there's a melody, maybe a hook comes into your head. There's all kinds of ways a song can begin. For you guys, how do you usually begin? Where does a song start, and how does it build from there?
For me, probably 99 times out of 100, I have to have the title before I am able to move forward. You know, the thing is with songwriting is everyone has a different process.
Yeah.
Some people can sit down with a guitar or a piano and just start coming up with melodies, and eventually they'll find their way to the lyrics. But for me, I kind of work the opposite way. I like to walk into the session with ideas, or at least before I sit down to actually write a song, I'd like to know where the song's going to go. What is our title? So for me, it's always about having a clear definition or a clear path of where I'm trying to go with the song, from a general overall vibe sense, which usually comes from the title for me.
Sure. Do you have like a notebook or something like that where you're jotting down titles and then you're kind of looking at those for inspiration when you go into a session, or like how does that work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you know, it used to be on my laptop, and now everything is just in voice notes on my phone.
Yeah.
I just constantly write down ideas, whether it's what I think could be a line in a song, or I mean, I'm guilty of usually always trying to have the title. I like to know what the title is. Maybe that's a Nashville thing. I think it's more of a Nashville thing because, you know, lyrics are so important in country music. But I mean, yeah, that's how I do it. I'm curious how Andre, what his process is, because everybody's different.
Yeah, I always find songwriting is one of my favorite topics to talk about for exactly that reason. Yeah, Andre, what's your typical starting point?
Well, I mean, typical. I mean, I'm downtown Toronto, so I'm not doing as much country as Tebey is. I'm doing more pop stuff. But I am still doing folk and Americana and stuff like that. But I think it's like he said, it's different for every artist based on their strengths when I work with them. Most of the time, I like to begin with lyric ideas. Doesn't have to be a title. For me, that's more challenging, I think, to nail than a hooky melody. I also tend to spend more time crafting lyrics when just because strong melodies come really natural to me. You also asked about some other methods. I think developing lyrics around a specific rhythm and beat is a really cool, different way to kind of write something. Like, you know, like We Will Rock You or Hey Mickey, you know, it's just kind of like you get that beat and you can kind of develop something rhythmic around that beat. I think that's really an interesting method. Also developing a song around like a story or like an emotion, I think is really a really cool way to discover writing a new song that might be, if you're having trouble kind of figuring out where you want to go topic wise.
Yeah, like, kind of on that topic, you guys have both done a lot of co-writing, and do you often work with other people who have a totally different way of working, or at least a totally different starting point? And is it interesting for you to kind of see and start to build off of someone else's different starting point?
It depends on what they're bringing to the table. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes I have artists who are bringing like notebooks filled of just lyrics or concepts. And then other times I have people who just bring an idea that's just a melody, or even like Tebey said, a title, you know, so it's kind of different. You kind of have to work with the artist that you're working with, vision and strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if I could just jump in, I 100% agree. 100% agree with that. You know, when I travel overseas to the UK or Scandinavia to write pop songs, the process is a lot more like Andre just described. Usually it's more track driven. So yeah, he's 100% right. I think it's different within each genre, the way songs are crafted. You know, obviously Nashville is a little bit more organic than pop music. So yeah, I 100% agree with what he said. You know, when I'm doing pop music, it is mostly starting from a done track already from a producer.
That's true. How do you avoid falling into, especially when you write as much as, you know, you guys do, or anyone that writes a lot, it's easy to fall into habits and cliches and that kind of stuff. Is that something you have to be cognizant of and kind of just catch yourself when you're doing it?
Maybe. Maybe. But you know what? Again, it kind of does depend on the genre that you're writing in. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there's a lot of cliches in pop music that get used over and over and over and over and over again that are, you know, consistently hit songs. But I guess you could say the same thing about country music. You know, you throw a truck in it and I don't know. I think it's difficult to say per se, but I mean, what do you think, man?
Honestly, for me, the way I avoid cliches is just to read and listen to as much music as I possibly can, and especially the genres that I write for. So I'm really up to date with my Spotify New Music Friday, just so I know what's going on. I think it's really important for writers to like, you know, before we had streaming, I remember my mentor at Christmas Management was just like, you know, he's just like, you better be buying Billboard every week and reading it cover to cover. This is something you want to do. So, you know, that's something I started to do as a writer early on in my career. Now we're into Spotify, the digital age. I really recommend these artists to make your own best of 2022 playlists and grab from different, you know, playlists like Spotify's New Music Friday or whatever playlist that is. But you know, going back to using cliches, I also want to say that you shouldn't limit yourself or block yourself from a certain strategy or technique just because you think that it's been used 100 times. Like Tebey said, there's still a lot of pop songs that use certain cliches. So just be careful to not sabotage a great song idea, you know, being afraid of being, you know, using a cliche term or something. If it's there, or if it's repetitive, if it's a hook and it's strong and it's making you feel good, then maybe ride with it, you know?
That's interesting. How do you guys listen to music in the sense of like, are you listening in a different way than a typical music fan would? Are you listening to music and thinking, oh, there's an interesting turn of phrase, or that's interesting how they did that sort of thing?
That's one of the hardest things for me is I try to listen as a fan. I try to listen as your average person that, you know, is driving their kids to soccer practice that's got Kiss 92 on the radio. But it's really hard because I think as songwriters, it's very easy to start dissecting songs. I wouldn't have done that. I think their pre-chorus could have been stronger. That's very, very easy to do if you're a professional songwriter. So I think the trick is to just try to pretend that you're not in this business, that you've never written a song before, and just try to get out of that headspace and just try to, you know, listen to music like your average listener would listen to.
Yeah. Hey, how about you, Andre? Do you find it easy to listen to music for pleasure, or you find yourself dissecting it too?
It depends on what drugs I'm on.
Yeah, agreed.
No, for real, it's I find that a lot of pop music, it's hard for me not to be judging it because like that's what I do when I'm like, okay, we're at the, you know, verse, how did is the chorus hitting, all that stuff. But I love to listen to jazz music and I love to listen to opera and all this other kind of stuff that I can't, like, it's not even in my world, you know what I mean? And hip hop, I'm not a big producer when it comes to hip hop, so sometimes I like to dive into that and my brain kind of shuts off. You know, maybe I'll hear lyrically, I'll hear some stuff that's interesting, but it takes me further away from, you know, judging a song and not enjoying it. But yeah, definitely, it could be a challenge, definitely sometimes.
Yeah. When it comes to like self-assessment, in any kind of artistic thing, it's hard to, especially when something is fresh, to give it an honest judgment when it's work that you've done yourself. So how do you guys assess whether a song is good or not? Or how, you know, what advice do you have for aspiring songwriters to know if they have what it takes to be successful, to be a good songwriter?
Well, I think that's what sets your average songwriter apart from the most successful ones, the Max Martins of the world, is knowing what is a hit song. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. It's just like, if you want to be a hit songwriter, then you have to know when you have something and when you don't.
Yeah.
But as far as, you know, when I write a song, I think I'm at the point now in my career where I don't put the blinders on because I'm so excited about something, it being new. Yeah. If that makes sense. I think a lot of younger writers, you know, they'll start finishing the song and then they get really super excited and they lose because it is something new and shiny in front of them, you know, and they lose that perspective. So how I've combated that is I like to let songs sit on a shelf. I really do. And I know it's harder. It's easier in country music, of course, because it's not production and things like that are not changing over as quickly as it is in pop music. But then to say that though, a great melody is always going to be a great melody. So I just like to let songs sit on the shelf. I mean, for my own artist career, I usually won't record a song until I've left it alone for 6 months. And then I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it in a couple months or 6 months. And if it still feels as good as that I thought it did, then I know I might have something. But I think letting it digest and being objective, and the only way to do that is to step away from it and then come back with fresh ears.
Yeah, that's interesting. I find such an analogy there. Like in terms of like magazine writing and narrative writing, totally different thing, obviously, than songwriting. But I do find the same thing in that if I've just finished writing an article or whatever it may be, it's hard to give it an honest edit and be like, that sentence doesn't read well, or that's, you know, that's redundant or whatever it is. But yeah, I come back to it even a week later or even a couple of days later. It's like, oh yeah, you know, that paragraph doesn't need to be there, whatever it is. Like, Andre, like in terms of self-assessment and self-editing for you, how do you find that process, both in terms of how difficult it is, but also just in terms of how you go about it?
Absolutely. So just to echo what Tebey was saying, it does separate kind of the big boys to the ones that are just starting out. I think a lot of it has to do with building confidence in yourself and your belief in what you think is good and what you're not kind of thinking, oh, well, do other people think this is good? You know what I mean? I kind of base everything for me is on feeling, you know, and if I'm still feeling it, and again, you kind of have to wait. So again, what I do is I listen to it about 5 or 6 times and then just leave it alone for like a week or whatever it is I need to sleep on it. And if I remember a melody or a hook after that time and I'm still digging it, then great, let's move forward. If not, then we make the changes that I feel need to be changed. But another really cool way to test the waters, when I was writing for Sony and BMG with Duncan, you know, we would write these songs and we weren't really sure if they were strong enough. So what he would do is he would play them for his kids in the car, like the demos, and to see the reaction, because I think we were writing for, you know, really, really pop-based stuff. And he would always be like, yeah, they like this song, they didn't like this song. So, you know, playing it for your non-music friends, I'm a big fan of, because like we said earlier, I feel like producers and musicians, we listen to stuff differently. Like music hits us differently, and we kind of, I really think that getting an opinion off a non-musician friend is really valid and important, because they're not kind of, I guess they're you know, they've got fresh ears in respects to like not being part of the industry and jaded by what we're listening to. So,
did you guys need to learn to have like thicker skin when it came to like feedback from producers or co-writers or artists or A&R and that kind of stuff? Is there a lesson in taking constructive criticism?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll let Andre go because I need to think about that one.
Yeah, honestly, at the end of the day, man, in my 20s when I was an artist, I was just so ego-driven, and like I think it has more to do with your ego. You need to kind of let your guard down, and you know, you have to understand that it's just a song. Like, it's just a song. You're gonna write another one. You can write another one. You're gonna write hundreds, hopefully, in your career. But you know, don't get too caught up with an idea. People get so attached with their feelings with these ideas, and I understand it's art and you're creating it from a place deep inside of you. But you know, you got to let it free, and if and be open to suggestions. I feel like that really hindered my career earlier in my development, is the apprehensiveness to work with other great songwriters and to change ideas around. So be open to that early in your career.
That's good insight.
But there's also, if I could just jump in real quick,
yeah,
I mean, it's also dangerous seeking opinions from other people, in my opinion, because the hardest thing about being a hit songwriter is knowing a hit when you have it. And there's a lot of people out there that don't know a hit song. I mean, let's just be honest, you know? So I tend to seek advice or feedback from people whom I respect. People who I know have had hit songs, who have had Billboard #1s, that I know what they know. I know they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Because as I said earlier, just being blatantly honest. I mean, there's a lot, you can play songs for your friends, but they might like everything. You know, I mean, so I try to go after people that I respect, that I truly think know what a hit song is, or know when something is good or when it's not, personally for me.
Yeah. It's interesting. In terms of go back to writing lyrics specifically, and Andre, when you and I chatted for Canadian Musician Podcast recently, you said this, and you might have alluded to it earlier here, but you're saying, and it's a sentiment that I've kind of heard from a number of songwriters I've talked to over the years, but that being that they find it easier, and you find it easier, many artists find it easier to write a melody rather than a good lyric. I'm kind of, first, Andre, interested to get kind of your thoughts on that, but also just find out from both of you, are you more concerned with serving the melody or rhyme scheme, or what the words or story is actually saying?
Well, for myself, I know myself as a songwriter, and I know I need to put extra effort into lyrics than I do with my hooks and melody, just because I was a hooks and melody guy in my team for such a long time. That is my strength. I know my strength. But I think that at the end of the day, I'm extremely concerned with both sides equally. So, because without a great lyric, a great melody won't really stand on its own, and vice versa. So it's really important to really be cautious of both, in my opinion. So
yeah, a great melody is, for me, that's number one, because people sing melodies. They don't sing, I mean, they do sing lyrics, but you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it's a melody that sticks in your head.
Yeah, it's the melody, and honestly, I feel like the lyric comes second. And I think one of the greatest pop songwriters of all time, Max Martin, has proved that time and time and time again. I mean, I would challenge someone to tell me what the song "I Want It That Way" by the Backstreet Boys is about. Yeah. Because I can tell you right now that it's about nothing. But that melody is incredible 20 years later, and that lyric works. It just fits so nicely, and you've seen that time and time again. You're going to hear me talk about Max Martin, because I truly believe, other than the Paul McCartneys of the world, he's one of the best of all time, and he puts a lot of focus on the melody, because it's all about a hit melody, and then trying to work everything else into it.
Yeah, the thing I always find so interesting about Max Martin is being Swedish and English being a second language, and especially in those like 90s massive hits he had with Britney Spears and NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, and that is like, his English is better these days. But when he was writing those songs that like kind of defined a genre and an era, he was really just writing to the rhyme scheme and the melody, and often, the words were almost gibberish to him in terms of their literal meaning, which is
no, but seriously, I mean, 100%. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, I've spent endless amounts of time in Sweden. I actually speak Swedish because I've been going there for 15 years. And I've worked with a lot of people that have worked with Max. I mean, we can get into that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're 100% right. I think there's a huge advantage for those guys. There still is today, but there has been in the past, because English is not their first language. Of course, they're fluent in English. You can speak to them. There's no issues, but they don't overthink it because it's not their native tongue. And I learned that very early on going to Sweden, that it's all about the phrasing. I mean, and again, I don't want to see, there's a lot of different genres of music we're talking about. You can't put all of this into one genre. But when it comes to pop music, Max has been the master of, maybe he has that one good hook line, "Since You've Been Gone," or whatever it is, but the rest of it just really needs to sing good. You see that a lot with the Ariana Grande stuff. The title is usually pretty awesome, and then everything else just is amazing ear candy as far as the lyrics are concerned.
In terms of versus chorus, that's awkwardly phrased, speaking of writing. But yeah, when it comes to, a chorus and a verse, is it a similar thing? Are the verses really just there to get you to the next chorus where you can sing along, or are you putting equal emphasis on crafting both?
Depends on the song. For me,
whole thing's important, like I don't disregard a part just because it's a verse or it's a bridge or something. Like, for me, like, it all has to be awesome from the very first lyrics, the very first melodies, to the very end. And that goes with the production too. Like, I'm critical with everything, because if anything's lacking for me, I want to improve it. And I guess that's a little OCD on my part, but at the end of the day, that's the way I was brought up with my mentors. It's just very like, just high standards with everything. It's way too competitive to be like, it's the verse, it's all good if it's a little weak. Fuck no. Like try harder. You know what I mean? Yeah.
We've talked a bit already about co-writing in that, but I'm interested to kind of get the kind of the bad and good of solo writing versus co-writing. Like, how do you find those two experiences and the pros and cons of each?
I never write by myself.
Yeah.
Ever.
Really? Even starting a song that you bring in to someone else?
Not really. To be honest with you, not really.
Yeah.
I know my strengths, and that is not necessarily one of them. I like to try and, as I said earlier, try to come in with the title, try to come in with a direction. But no, I like to collaborate. I love working with people that do what I don't do better. That's why I work with a lot of the same people, because we just have this vibe. And I know that where I may lack as far as lyrics are concerned, she's going to pick up the slack because she does that really, really well.
Yeah.
So I just try to surround myself with people that make me better, people that do things that I don't do well. And I'm not the greatest lyricist by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, I just try to surround myself with people that make me better and do what I don't do.
Yeah. How about you, Andre? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons of both. Obviously, like there's no rules. For me, I'm kind of agree with Tebey. I would never write a song by myself without getting feedback. You know, just because I've been in this industry for so long, and that's just the way it's done. You know, but again, if you are someone who likes to write on their own, go for it. You know, there's a lot of artists that do. There are a couple pros to writing on your own. You get to keep 100% of your publishing. That's a big deal. And you don't have to compromise. You don't have to change a lyric if you think it's great. You don't have to change it. But again, like you go into the cons, like what Tebey was saying, is you might be missing a different perspective from someone else's point of view that might strengthen the idea. You also limit yourself to growth as a songwriter, because writing with people is the fastest way to get better as a songwriter. Any professional songwriter will tell you that. So for me, how I approach solo writing is strictly working out just short ideas, whether they're storylines or a title or a melody, just to prepare it for a writing session.
Yeah. You've both written in pop and country and other genres, and you've kind of talked, you know, there's no one size fits all answer to a lot of these questions, as Tebey, you were just pointing out, because it does change a lot from style to style or genre to genre. But, you know, what are the skills and attributes that you would assign to different genres that you've worked in? Do you approach songwriting differently depending on what you're writing or who you're writing for?
Yeah, I think that you need to understand the genre that you're writing in. I see that a lot with Nashville writers, fantastic Nashville writers, hit songwriters that want to move into the pop world, but they don't live in that world. And I think that's a very important thing to understand. It's like, if you're trying to write a hit pop song, you need to speak that language. And I think that's the hardest thing. It's been hard for me. I mean, even though I've had a lot of success doing that, I mean, if I'm in Nashville, which I am, and I'm writing country songs for 4 months, and then I hop on a plane and I go to Stockholm to hang out with my buddies and write pop songs, well, it's going to take me 3 or 4 days to adjust and to get back into that genre and getting my head wrapped around the end goal of this genre. Because there's things that would work in country that would not work in pop, and vice versa.
That's interesting. How about you, Andre? Like, in terms of the skills and attributes you need across genres, is it a significantly different approach for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think different genres you need to approach differently. For me, my experience in like pop or hip hop or EDM, like we were talking earlier, a backing track is usually typically created first. And it usually has the progressions, the instrumentation, keyboards, bass, guitar, whatever it is. And then you kind of top line over that with pop stuff. And then, you know, when I'm writing in Nashville or I'm writing with someone who's more folk or Americana, you know, I feel like it evolves organically with guitars or piano while writing like lyrics and melody. It's also based more on storytelling, whereas like pop is more hook driven. Unlike some other genres, co-writers are typically in the same room contributing to the lyrics and the melody with something a little bit more country, where it's not like that with pop. But, you know, there's definitely a different approach for different genres, for sure.
The top line writing thing for pop music, I find fascinating. And maybe, Andre, if you don't mind, just for folks listening who maybe aren't familiar with the term, just define what it means to be writing top lines, would be a top line writer. But also, like, how does that process work, like, in terms of, you know, what you're getting, how you're writing to, and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, like top line process. The top line is when someone sends you a track, and then you have to write the lyrics and the melody over it, whether it's the chorus or whatever section they want. I used to get like 10 or 15 tracks a week from my producer friends and publishing companies asking that I write lyrics or melody under them. And I would just demo them at my place, like at my own home studio. And if I knew Rihanna was looking for a single, I would actually choose those tracks that sound like her style. And then I'll start the writing process over it. I start with a melody and then choose a lyrical content with a long list of concept of ideas that I usually keep in my phone. which I think we were talking about earlier. But if you're able to record your own top lines, I feel like that is a big deal, like learning your own DAW and becoming your own engineer, just because it'll save you a lot of money, or the publishing company you're working with a lot of money in regards to tracking that idea. So I think it's important to approach it that way.
How about you, Andre? Have you done much of that? Or sorry, not Andre, Tebey, I mean. Have you done much of that?
Done much of, sorry, I just want to clarify.
Sorry, I was top line writing.
Oh, yeah, I think I used to do it more in the past.
Yeah.
As I developed as I started writing more and, my career evolved, I found that I like being in the same room as people. Mm-hmm. It's expensive. It's not cheap going to Copenhagen twice a year, or Sweden or London or whatever. But for me, that's just, I like being in the same room with people. So yeah, I prefer not to just top line from tracks. But I have done it in the past. I mean, one of the songs that I did for One Direction was written that way. Some friends of mine in Sweden sent us the track, and I sat down here in Nashville with my buddy Tommy, and we just wrote the top line over top of that track. So I have had success doing that. I think I prefer not to, maybe.
Yeah. When you're doing that, and this is a question for both of you, but are they giving you any parameters about what you write to the track, or is it just here's the track, do what inspires you?
For me, I usually don't. I try not to have any parameters. I mean, one of the things that I'd love to get across to the people listening to this is that I particularly never try. Not anymore. I used to. I don't try and specifically shoot for an artist. Because I've always found in my experience that if you're shooting for something, if you want to write a song for Britney Spears, well, you're probably going to write something that sounds like something she's already done. So you're already out the gate, you're already behind the ball, because she doesn't want to do that again. She wants her career to revolve. I particularly don't like writing with a specific artist in mind. If someone sends me a track and they're like, oh, this would be great for Chris Brown, I'm like, yeah, it would be, that'd be cool. But I'm just going to try to write the best song that I can over it, because 99 times out of 100, the song never lands where you thought it was going to land anyways. I mean, I don't even think I would have, the words One Direction would have come out of my mouth when I wrote either one of those songs for them. It's just not, I didn't write it for them. I just wrote a great song.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Hey, Andre, how about you, related to what Tebey was just saying? Are you often writing with an artist in mind, or you were just writing and seeing where it goes from there?
Well, if I'm writing songs for the sake of writing songs and placing them wherever I like, nowhere specifically, then I'm just focusing on a great song. But typically, if I'm working with a publishing company and we're writing songs for a specific artist, if we're getting top lines, we were working with Pitbull's team for a little while, and he would send us a ton of ideas and we would write over them. But it's important to kind of like know their vibe, like know their terms, because he's from Miami, so he uses a lot of these specific terms. And when you're writing, you may want to kind of have a general background of the brand that artist is trying to push, so you're fitting into that brand if you're called to write on someone specific. But if I'm just writing music to get placed for any artist, then I'm not focused on a specific genre. I'll just write a great song.
Just realizing the time, before we get to audience questions, there's a couple kind of more business or career oriented questions I want to get through quickly. But that is like for any professional songwriter, in terms of a publishing deal, that's going to be very important to their career. So what have you guys respectively learned to this point about the publishing business and ensuring that you're getting a fair deal?
You want the truth, or do you want me to teach you bullshit?
Ideally the former.
It's tough. I have a love-hate relationship with publishing deals, if I'm honest.
That's fair.
I've never shied away from being honest. I'm just going to give it to you. It is what it is. I find that publishing deals are basically a bank loan with horrendous interest for the most part. I mean, at this point in my career, I don't have a publishing deal. Have I been offered new publishing deals? Absolutely, I have. But I personally would rather bet on myself, because I don't need the money right now to survive, if I'm honest with you. So I would rather bet on myself, because you know what? If I can get a Rihanna single where I own the publishing, I'm going to make a hell of a lot more than if I'm getting, if I'm getting a $40,000 draw from a publisher when I don't need that money. And at the end of the day, I truly believe that, and we'll see what Andre has to say, but I truly believe that no one's going to work harder for you than yourself anyways. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, a publisher is there to help you, of course. And a lot of them will try to sell you on stuff, but at the end of the day, you're probably the one going out there and getting these songs placed. I have a love-hate relationship with publishing deals. It's to each their own, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm interested to get what Andre says, but I've talked to both songwriters and publishers who have said, essentially, your publisher is there to get your song placed and used in places that you either don't have the time, skill, or connections to do yourself. So you got to make sure that your publisher is making money that you wouldn't be able to be making off of your songs yourself. But yeah,
in
Andre,
theory.
I'm
gonna get in so much trouble.
I appreciate that, man. Andre, what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, times have changed, from back in the day. Getting a deal isn't the same. You don't have the same advantages, compared to now. So Tebey said, he nailed it. I mean, that goes for record deals too. It's kind of the same thing. They're just really, I feel like the grass is greener type. People get like, their ego gets too far deep into the fact that they're working with a major label. I have never signed a publishing contract in my whole entire life, and I probably will never sign a publishing contract in my whole entire life. But I've written for all the labels, and I was able to write with all the labels at the same time and kind of overlap. And I wasn't told that I couldn't do something, which I hate. I hate being told that I can't do something. That's just my personality. So I'm unemployable, but at the same time, don't get caught up in the terms, if the contract works for you and it makes sense, then go for it. But, if it doesn't, it's always better that they're banging on your door than you're banging on theirs at the end of the day. And I could say that for an artist too. And not enough artists and songwriters really get that into their head. You know what I mean? Attract them, get your hits under your belts first. And then if you want to sign, an admin deal or something like that, go for it. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's better to be independent in this landscape, I would think.
Yeah.
I think it just depends on what your particular situation is. I mean, if you're a young kid who's living in Los Angeles and you're 23 years old and you can't pay your rent because you're having you have to bartend every night. Well, signing a publishing deal where they pay you 40 grand a year allows you to do that for a living to potentially have success. So that would make sense. It just depends on your situation. So yeah, I think Andre's right. It just depends. And know the business, know what you're signing up for as well. There's a lot of people that don't understand the business of music. That's why they call it the music business.
Yeah.
You need to understand the terms of these deals. You need to understand royalty percentages. You need to understand what co-pub means, what reversions mean. Recoupable is the word of the day every day for the rest of your life if you're going to be in the music business. The word is recoupable. Because if you go out to dinner with your publisher, you might be paying for that. You just don't know. If and Andre said earlier, saving your publisher money by being able to record your own vocals and not having to go and spend $600 for 3 or 4 hours in a studio that your publisher would pay for. But guess who's actually paying for it? You are, because that's going to get put on your balance. And a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, every single cent, it's coming back to you. You got to pay for it, whether it's now or in your royalties.
Yeah, man, that's good advice. It's interesting. I didn't know before now that both of you had decided to not take a publishing deal and stay independent, which is pretty telling and really interesting.
Well, it's all about relationships at the end of the day, like make those relationships, get in a room with them. If you're a good enough songwriter, I mean, Tebey and I aren't going to just be like, no, that person doesn't have, how many years do they have? Like, are they with a label? No, whatever. Like, get into a room with someone, go meet someone at a party, go to a songwriter event, get out there and start meeting people, because that is how you really get placed. That's how I got all my placements, is just meeting people in sessions and making friends and just kind of shooting the shit and writing great music,
Yeah. Real quick, last question before we get to audience questions. But aside from kind of the obvious royalties you get through your publishing or your PRO like SoCan, are there any other areas where you're exploiting your songs to make money off of them?
Andre?
Yeah, definitely. This is a great question. I love this question. So there's a few ways you can make money in regards to being a songwriter without getting royalties. I mean, looking at sync opportunities. I mean, I know that kind of stems with the same thing, but sync opportunities in TV and movies is great.
Huge these days, yeah.
Yeah, performance royalties. I know you said no royalties, but performance royalties is a little different. If you're part of SoCan, that's something you could look into. Getting paid to demo other people's song. This is also an important reason why you should be learning how to use a DAW. Once you gain some major experience, you can always teach others who are just getting into songwriting, charge per class if you want to. And then in the future, a lot of hype right now is around NFTs, non-fungible token. I don't know if people are kind of reading about this, but there's a lot of hype for songwriters and artists to make money using these. So I would look into that, you know. There's a bunch of ways to make money.
Totally. All right. It's about 2:45 now. I think there's a lot of audience questions that have been coming in. So I guess the name of the game here will be to keep the answers direct and brief while still, you know, answering the question. But let's get into the first one here from Elizabeth. She says, how do you begin the process of songwriting when you have only written one song so far? Is it best to jot your thoughts down first before you begin, or is there a better way to start? So she's like very beginner songwriter, just kind of what's the best way to just begin your songwriting journey?
It's like a muscle. I mean, I've always described it that way. You know, if you want to have really toned abs, and you got to work at it every day. And I feel that songwriting is the same thing. I mean, you know, they talk about this 10,000 hours type of thing, you know, and you got to put in the time. You know, no one is going to just open up their notebook or whatever and start writing hit songs straight away. It just does not happen. I feel very confident when I say that. It just doesn't happen. You know, they call Nashville a 10-year town for that reason. I think you just need to do it, dive into it, and continue it frequently, and just polish that you know, that, or just work out those muscles.
Yeah. And just quick, kind of add a follow-up question to you there, Tebey. But like going back to what we were talking about near the beginning, when you're saying you always start with the title, is that something that, thinking way back to when you were a teenager or younger, whenever you first began songwriting, were you starting songs all kinds of ways, and it was eventually you landed on, oh, like starting with the titles, what works for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think you evolve as you start writing more. You find out what you know, the process that works for you. I mean, if there was a black and white ABC, this is what you need to do to write a hit song. Yeah. Then everybody would be writing hit songs. I mean, it's just it's not that clear cut. Everybody has a different process. Everyone has different ways they like to write songs. Some people love to collaborate. Some people don't. I mean, it's very tricky. You kind of just have to figure it out as you go along, if I'm honest. It's not like you can just go to school. You can't, you know, you can go to school to become a doctor. You can go to school to learn how to do carpentry, but songwriting is not really like that. And that's why it's so difficult. You just kind of have to figure it out for yourself and what works for you, and how you can write the best songs possible.
Yeah. Andre, anything to add?
No, that's perfectly said. Yeah.
All right. From Josephine. How do you songwrite with just instruments and melody with no words?
Just instruments and no melody. How do you write with just instruments and no melody?
No, just instruments and melody, but no words.
Huh.
It'd kind of be a soundtrack then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You're kind of like humming a melody, I suppose. In that regard,
I mean, that's how I kind of write melodies, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like they just come to you, you know?
There's the old Paul McCartney story about how yesterday started as scrambled eggs. Like he often just writes gibberish, and then once he has the melody, goes and fills in actual words.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes those words end up being lyric ideas too, if someone in the room is actually listening. And that's why, you know, there's so many times where I'd just be like, I'd sing an idea, and they'd be like, oh, I like that melody, and then someone else in the room is just like, by the way, what you just said is pretty cool, because we could actually use these words and just split them this way, and it'd be a really cool hook. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, that gibberish turned into something cool. That being said, always record your sessions. Always, always, always from the very beginning. I'm telling you, how many times have I said something or sang something like, what was that? What was that? And they're like, oh, you know, at the same token, if it's not good enough to remember, it's not good enough to have. But at the same time, you don't want to lose a great idea. So just record your sessions, make sure you get everyone's permission right from the very beginning.
Yeah. From Dennis, like, how important is structure, length of song, and those kinds of things? Like, we didn't get much into the actual structure of a song, the length for a pop song, and that kind of stuff. How much are you thinking about those types of parameters on the songs you write?
I mean, for me, I just try to make sure it's not too long. You know, and again, that's just understanding what you're writing for. And again, this is so broad because we can be talking about Americana, we could be talking about country, pop, hip hop. It's kind of just knowing what you're writing for the genre. Country music right now, it's going to be very hard for you to find a song on the radio that's over 3 minutes in country music right now.
Wow, that's short.
And that has changed over time. I mean, country songs used to be a lot longer, but now they've kind of taken the pop approach where it's like, okay, get to the point and let's give them 2 minutes and 40. I mean, the number one, the Billboard number one that I had a couple of years ago was only 2 minutes and 43 seconds.
Yeah.
But again, that changes. You know, that changes with genre and all those other things.
Yeah. There is a gun that short. I always kind of thought it's like 4 minutes as sort of like the average country or pop song length. Man.
And the thing is, there's no rules. There's no rules either, right? I mean, there's some songs that repeat the chorus 5 times and have one verse.
Yeah,
it's just that there's no rules, and that's what makes it so hard.
Andre, anything to add?
Yeah, just songs are getting shorter. I think they're going to become even more shorter. You know, the new 330 was the new 3, and the new 245 is now the new 3, and we're just trying to get to a point where I think, in my opinion, we're going to get to a point where one full song will be able to fit on a TikTok. I think that's where we're going. And I know it's like, see Tebey shaking his head, but you know, it's just, these songs are getting very short. And again, it depends on what you're writing for, who you're writing for. Is it super pop? Do you want, you know, you're looking to sell records, or you're looking to, you know, so yeah, we're going in a very weird direction musically right now. So
our attention spans are just so short as well. Like, that's why people don't really make albums anymore. I mean, you've got your hangers on, the old school, you know, artists, but then you've got your Adeles and Taylor Swift. But other than that, I mean, who's really making albums? It's just, and I think streaming has a lot to do with that. Not necessarily that it's a bad thing, but I just, especially in this day and age, people's attention spans are extremely short. And they just want to get to the point. So give me that hit song that feels good, that I can put on TikTok, that's 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and then I move on to something else.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with the streaming paradigm, in that you're not selling an album, you're trying to have like a constant trickle of content, so you're always there on the platform, and the algorithm's always putting you in front of people rather than putting out a huge body of work that people will listen to for a couple of weeks and then forget about for a couple of years. It's about keep trickling out songs so that the algorithm keeps putting you in front of people. All right, where were we? Oh, this is an interesting one that I've kind of heard very different answers to over the years. But if you could think of one of your favorite songs that you've written, how long did it take to get it all down? This is from Gia. She says, I've always heard that the best lyrics or songs have come effortlessly. Can't speak all of a sudden. But essentially, any truth to that for you in terms of the best songs come quickly?
Depends on the song. It depends on the situation. I don't know. I know that I'm a classic overthinker. I overthink like you would not believe. Like, it's very, very rare that I will finish a song within 3 sessions, just because I like to go back and tweak and tweak and tweak. So that's me, but I don't know what Andre has to say.
Yeah, it's really cool hearing from Tebey, because I'm the polar opposite. If I don't like it right away, it's garbage. Like, no, like, I know what I like right away. When I see it, when I hear it, obviously my mind will change after listening to it. Like we were speaking earlier, you got to sit with the song, but typically in a session, it's like if we're not done in 4 hours, it's like it's kind of like it was a tough session.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Yeah, so
I think just being a nerd for this kinds of stuff. And Tebey, like you were saying earlier, there's no hard and fast rules that apply to everything. There's classic songs that we've all heard that were written in 10 minutes, and then there's something like Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, one of the most classic songs that took like literally years and years and like 25 different verses before he settled on it. But yeah, anyways, from Jacob, what about the opposite? Do you ever write a song and think after that maybe the lyrics sound silly? How do you get past that?
All the time. All the time. Yeah, I don't know about you, but for me, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. I write a lot of shitty songs, so yeah, I mean, you just don't hear them. But no, I mean, yeah, for sure. I rewrite. I do a lot of rewriting. So yeah, there's a lot of times where I'm like, the lyric just isn't right. But for me, that's it's usually not that the entire lyric isn't right. It's more like, okay, that verse could be stronger, because I usually will not go down the path of actually pursuing something unless I believe that it's close or it has
something there. Yeah,
there's something there. But yeah, so I mean, that's how I operate. But again, everyone's different.
Yeah. Andre, how about you?
Same thing. If there's a line that's just, it means what I want it to mean, but it doesn't make me feel the way I want it to feel, then I start to try to think of, maybe I can try to explain what this person's the story, that line. Maybe I can say it in a different way that might sound cooler or might flow off the tongue when you're singing a little easier. Maybe it's a little too wordy. You know what I mean? So sometimes those things kind of bother me, but you just have to kind of go back to the drawing board. That's how I attack that. So.
All right. Guys, I'm realizing just how many questions we had coming in for you guys. So we're going to have to kind of do speed rounds here. But just so I know, and totally all right if you guys need to jump, because I had you on a certain schedule. Do you guys have any extra time?
Yeah, I'm good.
I do. Yep.
All right, cool. Well, we'll add a few more minutes, but I won't keep you guys way past 3. But we have a lot of questions here. Evan says, I find writing instrumentals like trying to paint, and that you constantly feel the need to add more. How do you stop yourself from putting too much into a song, and also figure out which song should be released? So
I think it just goes back to that internal meter, where you have to just fine tune it over time. And we talked earlier about what makes the best songwriters the best is they know when it's right and when it's not, typically. And I think just having that internal meter that can be like, okay, this needs some work or it doesn't. But yeah, as far as, instrumentals, that's a whole other ballgame. I only know like 5 chords, so I'm not writing any instrumentals.
How about you, Andre? Kind of the 2 questions there. First, in terms of like knowing when too much is too much when you're building a song, and also knowing, he kind of had a second question there about knowing which song to release as a single or to put on an EP or that kind of thing.
Yeah, just going back to the instrumental things, I'm not sure if he meant he's writing instrumentals for the sake of them being released as instrumentals or instrumentals to write over. I'm not sure what he means by that, but for me, it comes down to simplicity. If you can play the guitar, if you can play the song on one guitar and sing it and it's beautiful, great. It's like, U2's One. It's like you can put 1,000 instruments into that song, it's still going to be an amazing song. So I think to find the true strength of the song is how good does it sound stripped down, and can it stand on its own 2 feet with a piano and a vocal? If it can, great. You know what I mean? If not, then maybe you might want to improve that track. And that goes the same with building a track. For me, it's just like I try to take away as much as possible and then put in as much as possible and then start taking away until it feels right.
It's hard to not add, because, especially if we're creative people, we're always trying to, I can totally hear this sound being in there and stuff. But a classic example of this, of, the 2000s, the biggest producers in the world at the time, other than Max, were the Neptunes. And their tracks are as sparse as you wouldn't even believe. Sometimes there's only like 3 or 4 instruments in their entire tracks, but these are massive hits. So it's just finding that balance. It's like knowing when to take something out and knowing when it needs a little bit more. And it kind of just goes back to that instinct that the best songwriters and producers in the world have been able to hone into.
Okay. Another here from Shlomo. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. They say, if you've written a bunch of songs in terms of the lyrics and usually with melodies in mind, what are the steps to then, if you want to be a professional songwriter? So I guess they're saying not as a singer musician, but to get songs produced and picked up by others to get them out into the music world. So I guess what's the, if that's your goal, is to be the songwriter and not have a starting place as a performer yourself, kind of like, how do you go about that?
For me, it's I've always said this, if anybody asks me about, it doesn't matter really what kind of the advice is about being a songwriter. I'm like, if you want to be the best, you got to be surrounded by the best. That's just the way it is. If you want to be one of the best country songwriters, you got to come to Nashville. You know, and you can't be half in as well. I always say that as well. It's like, okay, is this going to be your job? Is this your life? Because there's no such thing as being half in. You can't just like, oh, I'm going to write songs on the side and I expect to have Billboard #1s. It just doesn't really work that way.
Interesting question here from Victoria. They say, when you are an artist who wants to write a specific type of song, i.e. a breakup banger, where do you start? They say, I find I'm getting writer's block from having a specific goal in mind. I typically just write when I'm inspired or emotional. I need to get unstuck.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to get unstuck. You know, a lot of it for me is writing on different instruments. I feel like that really kind of takes me out of my element. So, you know, okay, even if it's on acoustic guitar or a piano or even a bass, like it's just something so simple. I think that is a big deal. Changing your environment is a huge thing for me. I'm always writing the same kind of 4 walls. So if I feel uninspired, maybe I'll go right under a tree, or like maybe I'll go to a studio, or maybe I'll just switch it up. And then also what gets me unstuck is listening to other artists that I really admire and kind of getting ideas from that. So for me, like there's a lot of ways to get unstuck with ideas, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of trying to find alternative ways to kind of get those ideas out in different ways.
I fully agree. Fully 100%. You know, everybody has, I mean, I have the luxury that I'm able to travel as much as I do to write songs. But 100% agree with what Andre says. I mean, when I travel to Sweden and I wake up in the morning and I'm in Stockholm and I walk down the street and I go to a cafe I've never been to before and I'm talking to people I've never met, that sparks creativity for me, because it's not the same mundane, I'm going down to Music Row or I'm going to my studio in the beach to write every day in this same setting. So for me, travel is huge. I love to travel, and that really opens up the creativity. And also, now that I think about it, I like to get in my car and just groove the stuff that I used to listen to when I was younger. You know, I'll put on some Counting Crows that I haven't heard for 5 or 6 years. Just something that makes me excited about music, because I feel that when you get writer's block or you're really, really stuck, you start to like, you're not enjoying it, and you have to enjoy music. And for me, putting on some records that I used to listen to and haven't heard in a really long time helps me become more creative, because I get excited about music again.
Very cool. James asks, when you finish a song, what's the process to put your stamp on it and cement your copyright? So I guess this is more kind of like a technical business question, but I suppose it's copywriting your song, and essentially what do you do with a finished song in that regard?
Well, I just go through SOCAN when it comes to that stuff. You know, I just make sure it's properly, the splits are proper. A lot of people, I'm not sure if Tebey uses them, but a lot of writers use split sheets in regards to, you know, having a physical piece of paper with the splits on there. But again, it's just more communication, and it's more of the conversation with the artist that you're writing with, you know, when it comes to that.
Yeah. That makes a good point. I hear the folks at SOCAN say this all the time. Or if you're not in Canada, whatever your PRO is, ASCAP or BMI or whatever, but essentially get registered with them as soon as you begin songwriting, if you're at all serious about it, because it's if you are lucky enough to suddenly have a song take off and you're not registered with your PRO, it's a pain in the ass to kind of retroactively get that in order and get your royalties and that. So if you're songwriting, even if it's very early on and you're at all planning on taking it seriously, get registered with your PRO. All right, where are we here? Sorry, lost my spot.
Should I be selling my songs as NFTs? I'm just curious, because I don't even know that. I don't even understand it, but apparently I should be. So maybe.
That's a whole other loaded topic.
If you guys do like a seminar on that, I'd love to chime in, because
actually I have a whole lot of podcast conversations about that recently.
Awesome.
And I probably will be doing something at some point, but yeah, I have some pretty conflicting opinions on the whole NFT thing, to be honest.
Yeah.
The question for Andre, he said, if you're asked to write a top line, say for Pitbull, what happens if they don't use it? Is it yours to use somewhere else? That's a good question.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, if they're sending you the music, no, that is the engineer or the for whoever came up with that music, whoever recorded it, that's their property. You cannot use that. So you send the idea off, and if it turns into a B-side, then that's just it's on the massive shelf with all the other B-sides. But you can't use that. But I mean, who says you can't use a lyric that you wrote in that song? So if there's a line in there that you came up with and the song got shelved, and it's a couple years later and you're like, this line might work well in this, I would explore that. But when it comes to the actual music, that is not your property, so you're not able to use that.
Interesting. What do you generally owe, from Kareem, what do you generally owe a sync agent that lands your track in a movie or anything else, I suppose?
I don't even know I don't know honestly, I don't know, because I don't, everything I've done as far as syncs are concerned has been through when I had a publishing deal. Mm-hmm. So I honestly don't know. Maybe Andre knows.
Yeah, all the syncs that I've received have been two ways. So number one, they either pay you a flat fee and you deliver the song and you don't see any royalties or anything like that. There's been that, or you can still own part of the piece of the publishing and receive royalties. I think that's kind of the way, but every deal is different. It's hard to kind of know what their budget is or what they're looking to do. So it's really different. That's why it's a good idea to really find a good lawyer or someone that knows what they're talking about when it comes to any sort of deal that you're unsure of.
Mm-hmm. Kind of related to that, Patrick asks, if you don't have a publishing deal, then who are you using for publishing and admin to make sure everything is registered and collected properly internationally?
Well, for me, I don't have admin right now, and just because I have a great relationship with the SoCans and BMI, just based off of once you've had some hits, you just have great relationships and you're able to kind of get shit done where that's concerned. But Cobalt is really good. I know that Cobalt is a company that a lot of people will use. A lot of my friends that have had massive hits, and they have Cobalt to admin their stuff. Is that helpful? I think maybe.
Yeah. I guess the digital distributors also kind of come into that. Do either of you have any like DistroKid and CD Baby in that, which also kind of handle some of the stuff that publishers may handle? Have either of you ever used those services?
Yeah, I've used, with DistroKid, you kind of have to collect your royalties. That's really annoying. And that's why I never use DistroKid ever, because it's really annoying because I can never log in. It never works. And then I'm like, I have a meeting or something to do and I can't get to it. And I end up just, I don't know, anyway. So yes, you can go through digital streaming platforms, and I don't like that they're getting their hands dirty with this stuff, but yeah, I try to stay away from that personally. I don't know what Tebey's opinion on it, but that's mine.
Don't have one.
Yeah.
All right, we're 10 past 3. I told these guys I'd let them go at 3, so I'm going to ask one more, and appreciate you guys' time and patience here. Apologies to the folks that whose questions we didn't get to. It looks like it was a very active chat for this one. From Sebastian, how important is it to own your masters? How do you keep your publishing royalties without joining an aggregator like DistroKid, which you're kind of just talking about? Kind of adds a bunch of questions. What are the concerns of signing a contract where 100% of the publishing goes to a producer who also owns the masters? He says, I produce and write everything myself because all the contracts I run into seem to be entirely skewed against myself and other creators I'm exposed to. Any advice on navigating this?
It's kind of like a 6-part question.
It is.
Andre?
To begin with the first part, like how important is it to own your masters? Is that?
Yeah, I'll say this, man. I'm a big component, a big supporter of owning your own masters. If you follow me on Instagram, I post a lot of music stuff. And just yesterday, out of all the Instagram stories I post, one of them was Pharrell Williams, because he's a big supporter of the same thing. Creatives should always own their work. I think, if I'd rather work 3 jobs and pay for my record than give up my masters and to a label or a producer to get a discount on a song, because if that song hits, you won't be making half as much or however much you give away. So, you know, at the end of the day, you should own all your masters, and I think that should be non-negotiable in my opinion. But again, if you really need the money and you want to sacrifice some of your masters to work with someone, or, you know, to get to reach a goal, that's your choice. But for me, you know, from what I've learned from all my mentors and what I've seen, is you want to keep your masters, you want to own your own material always.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's different. I mean, it's different if you're an artist or a songwriter. I mean, those are kind of two separate things as far as owning masters are concerned. But yeah, as an artist, I've always owned my own masters since day one, and it's the smartest thing I've ever done. You know, I mean, there's a lot of other artists out there that have won more awards than me and get nominated and all that stuff, but they don't own their masters like I do. So wink, wink. So yeah, I've always been a huge advocate for that, but everyone has a different path, and some people aren't able to own their own masters, but even as a songwriter, if I'm being honest, I mean, when I got to a point where I'd had some success and people knew who I was and were kind of coming to me for stuff, I mean, there's been times where I've said to an artist, it's like, and this is honestly just business. And I've said, yeah, you guys can have this song, but I want to have a piece of this master. It's as simple as that. And I've been able to do deals like that. So, you know, it's just kind of figuring out the lay of the land. And I mean, if an artist is signed to Sony, well, then you're obviously not going to have, as a songwriter, you're not going to be able to get a piece of that master. But yeah, everything is negotiable. That's another thing too, right? Everything is negotiable.
Yeah. And kind of to end this on a point, I think it was Andre, maybe it was you that said it earlier, and something I've heard reiterated in so many conversations I've had, but you were saying about publishing, and same goes for managers, agents, all the various team members you're going to have. You always have more leverage if they're knocking on your door than if you're going knocking on their door. So, you know, make great songs, build an audience, and the people will be coming to you. And if they're coming to you rather than the other way around, you're going to have a lot more leverage and a lot more negotiating power. All right, guys, let's leave it there. I've kept you longer than I said I would. Like I said, I really appreciate you guys doing this. This has been fun. I see a lot of people talking about how much they in the chat here saying how much they appreciate what you guys have been saying and sharing and the honesty you've been given. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone for watching. Apologies again to anyone whose questions we didn't get to, but yeah, thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone has any more questions, just, find me on Instagram and shoot me a DM. I really don't mind. I love answering people's questions. I feel that, I know Andre probably feels the same way. I've been through it all in this business. And I always like passing on any knowledge that I can to people, because there's nothing worse than, being a songwriter or being in the music business and getting ripped off. So if you have any questions, if you need some help, just shoot me a DM. I'll answer for sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah, same here. I'm on Instagram at Andre Kaden Black. Find me if you need any help. You can DM me as well. I'm constantly doing conferences in Toronto. So, if you want to learn more, I always post about them. And thanks for having me. And it's nice to see Tebey. I don't know, a little fun fact here. Tebey and I went to high school together, funny enough. So, it's really cool to see him being so successful. After the last time I saw him, we were like, 16 years old or some, just snot-nosed kids just trying to impress girls with our guitars. So
that's a crazy coincidence that I had no idea about when I reached out to you respectively individually to do this. That's kind of crazy.
That's cool. That's why this went so well.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I'll let you run. Again, everyone, thank you for listening. This is going to everyone that's registered, and obviously if you're here, you're registered, you're going to get an email with links to additional information. And this webinar, if there's anything you missed or wanted to jot down, re-listen to, whatever, it's going to be up on our YouTube channel in just a couple days. So, all right, guys, thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Guys.
Thanks, guys.